Now, Sinan Ulgen is chairman of the independent think tank, the Center for Economics and Foreign Policy Studies. He joins us now from Istanbul. Thanks so much for speaking to us. First of all, did Turkey ever anticipate that this could actually happen? The YPG working with the regime to prevent Operation Olive Branch from advancing?
Well, yes, it's not a very big surprise considering the existing relationship between the regime and the YPG. The YPG, even in the past, after the onset of the Syrian crisis, never really took part under the umbrella of the Syrian opposition. Its relationship with the regime was perhaps a difficult but still a non-combatant one. We know, for instance, that in the initial phase of the Syrian crisis, the regime pulled back its forces from Afrin and left that to the YPG. So there is indeed a working relationship between YPG and the regime. We now saw this, a very clear illustration of this relationship with the latest agreement between the regime and the YPG. So perhaps it's not a big surprise, but nonetheless, it's an important development that is likely to affect not only the military, but also the political dynamics on the ground.
Right. Speaking of some of the dynamics, I mean, this essentially puts the U.S.-backed YPG in the same camp as regime forces, does it not? How does that make sense for the United States now?
Well, there are a lot of things that don't make sense. This is a crisis where we have seen a multitude of different partnerships that don't make sense. This is also a partnership that has received the backing of the Iranian-led militia, for instance. So the same can be said for Russia. On the one hand, Russia seems to be giving a green light to Turkey, at least in terms of allowing the Turkish Air Force to take part in this air campaign. But at the same time, it also seems to be backing this agreement between YPG and the regime. So in many ways, some of the global and regional actors that are involved in this conflict have switched sides, have established sometimes temporary and conflicting alliances, and this is the latest indication of that.
In the meantime, though, the conflict just continues. I mean, with these new so-called alliances, how bloody do you fear this could get?
Well, certainly one very difficult scenario to envisage is indeed if Turkey now does come into full military confrontation, not only with YPG, but also with the regime forces. That certainly also from an international point of view, that would be a different scenario. But so far, the statements coming from Ankara do indicate Turkey's continuing willingness to continue with the operation. So I assume that there has been an assessment made in Ankara, and despite this new change, these new modified dynamics on the ground, Ankara has decided to pursue with this operation. So the consequences of that decision, we shall see in coming days. I should nonetheless underline that in this particular case, Turkey will not be face-to-face with some of the core elements of the Syrian regime, but rather their supported militants.
Unfortunately, Sinan Ulgen, we're having some problems with your audio there, but we'll have to leave it. And I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your analysis with us on TRT World.